What's going on, guys? It's Seth back with another Defense Wins Fantasy. This week, we're finally starting to dive into the rookies or future rookies that we have coming up to the NFL draft. But first, I have some news. Bobby Wagner was released from the Rams earlier today. Kind of a little bit of a mutual separation there. Listen, the Rams didn't do what they thought they were going to try to do and run it back. They honestly were the worst team to win, like record-wise, after winning a Super Bowl. A lot of injuries, a lot of cap issues they are still struggling with. There could be more defensive players moved on from there, i.e. a Jalen Ramsey. Curious to see what Aaron Donald ends up doing, if he's going to come back for another year or not. But what does this mean for Bobby Wagner? Well, if you're in a dynasty league, at this point, you might as well just ride it to the end. The value that you're going to get for him, it's probably better to actually just ride him. He's still been a high performer. And my gut tells me that there's a chance that he re-signs with the Seahawks, which would be fantastic for his value. Cody Barton is a free agent there. Jordan Brooks tore his ACL, and he didn't have surgery on that ACL until I think January 19th, which puts him way behind schedule about even playing this next year. So the opportunity to go to a Seattle, he knows the system, he's beloved there, not going to be off or asking for nearly as much money as he was getting paid when they cut him last year, and gets to, finish out his career where he started it. But if he's still going to drive for money and possibly a championship, there's no telling where he might land. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But as far as for trade value, I wouldn't be trading for him at this point, because now there's a lot more unknown about how he's going to be used in the scheme. And I wouldn't be trading him away probably either, just because of the value you're going to get for him. I would rather take the risk if I'm trying to, run it back, win a championship, try to make the playoffs. He's more valuable at his age as an asset on your team than a trade asset. But we'll see what happens. I don't think he wants to hang it up. I'm pretty sure about that. So with that being said, let's go from the very old to the very young. And we're going to talk about safeties and cornerbacks today. We're going to save defensive linemen and linebackers for next week. Why is that? Because I'm going to the combine, boys and girls. I'm going to be watching firsthand next Thursday the D linemen and the linebackers run some drills and see if we can get a little bit more understanding about this class. Pretty excited about it. Be probably a little bit live there on some reels and whatnot from the combine. So keep posted on our Fantasy Holics Facebook page to see the information as we're seeing it live. It's going to be a really exciting next Thursday. So with that being said, because those guys are going to be going next week, we're going to focus on the safeties and the corners first and foremost. Now, I want to get something out of the way right off the bat. Safety-wise in this class, significant drop-off in talent compared to last year's class. Not only was last year's class, I feel like, better just overall NFL players, fantasy-wise was spectacular. Safeties especially. So, caveat to that is the guys we're going to be talking about, I'm not saying any of these guys are going to come break the doors down like last year's guys have done. But there's still some value to be had, and we're going to dive in and try to understand it. We'll get a little bit more understanding once we see what team they get drafted to, what scheme they're going to play in, all of that. But first, let's just take a look at the overall prospects and see what we can understand about what their skill traits are and how that's going to actually equal out to fantasy relevance. So we're going to start with the safeties, and the first guy we're going to talk about is Brian Branch out of Alabama. This guy's got good ball skills, solid coverage. He plays a mix of corner, nickel, and safety this past year. Not sure where he's going to end up playing in the NFL. It might be one of those guys, if you do have specific cornerback spots, and he might be eligible in that spot, but also be playing his primary snaps at safety. So those are always something to keep an eye on. He's a good tackler. Blitzes off the corner a lot with what I felt like was mediocre success as far as getting to the quarterback, but he was very good at timing jumps and knocking balls away at the line of scrimmage. When he's aligning as a defender in the box, he does a great job with the play recognition. Has the athleticism that allows him to get to any spot on the field. He's good closing speed against the run. He's a solid tackler, as I said. He's occasionally a violent tackler and has that nice physical presence about him, which is always nice to have a guy that's not afraid to go after the offensive players. Helps set the tone for that defense, becomes a leader really quick. He's better in zone coverage than he is in man, which is why I feel like he'll end up playing more at the safety role in the NFL. He's better at the zone because he can keep his eyes on the quarterback, jump routes, deflect passes, and just be disruptive in general. He's very rangy, make plays on the ball. His tracking can be a little bit of a struggle at times, especially when it goes deep down the field. But he's not one of the guys that's going to get a lot of interceptions. He seems to be more knocking the ball down than it is getting the picks. And as I said, he is a disruptive blitzer, not necessarily getting the sacks, but he's very good at timing up and applying pressure to the quarterback. And a lot of times he's able to then time up the jumping to bat the pass down. He had a lot of improvements this year that came more on man-to-man coverage in the slot, which is why I feel like the nickel might be a starting point for him as well. On multiple reps, receivers were able to take down Branch's cushion when playing off-man in the slot. So he's much better, a little bit more of a press nickel corner. Overall, he's got solid versatility in the defensive back. Where he's going to play is one of the biggest question marks. And, but he's kind of just a positive play guy. He's going to be on the field. They're going to find something for him to do, which leans towards starting or playing a lot of snaps early on rookie year. They're also getting a guy that has intensity, passion for the game, and could be one of those locker room leaders on the team. As I said, he's a versatile defender. He's got high-level run defender, high football IQ, but he's got some concerns with his man coverage and ball production as far as trying to pick the play off, try to pick off balls. A little bit more of a knockdown kind of guy rather than a interception ran guy. Now that brings us to the second safety we're going to talk about. That's Antonio Johnson out of Texas A&M. Now, this guy is instinctive. He plays that physical brand that I personally love when I'm looking at safeties as guys that I want on my dynasty team. He lines up all over the field, which is another box check for me. He's set up at slot corner. He's split safety. Even as a linebacker, which I love when they do this. And he shows comfort at all the roles. He's a sharp processor. He understands leverage and makes sure that he stays leveraged when he's going downhill in run defense. He's aggressive in pursuit, physical when playing through contact. He's a great tackler, and he is very fundamental when it comes up to tackling, whether that's the wrapping up the balance and bringing his feet through the tackle. So he's not going to be juked too often. He really breaks down well. And he doesn't give up yards after the contact. Once again, a tone setter kind of hitter. You'll love to see that. And he is a natural just feel for the zone coverages. And he just gets to his spot, gets to the landmarks, understands the route combination, and then capping the routes, showcasing his ability to adjust on the fly. He's just he's one of those guys that you think that's going to be able to really match up well against tight ends in the NFL or bigger slot receivers. His ball skills could be better. They could be better. I mean, let's be honest. But he's shown the ability to play through the hands of the wide receiver to get more pass defending, knock the ball out of their hands. All good things. Means he's right there. If they do catch it, he's right there to make the tackles. Going to get the points for that. Pass defense points should be something that we see out of this guy as well. The tough part is that he hasn't really shown a lot as far as making plays. He's got great ability to disrupt, playing, as I just kind of talked about, breaking passes up and catch points and stuff of that nature. His awareness with trying to understand the timing points for the interceptions and that kind of stuff. He misses chances to make plays on the ball down the field because of it. He's a bit of a higher cutting athlete that change of direction needs some work. That can be kind of taught, at the next level. However, you want to make sure that he's a guy that's not going to get juked out of his shoes by a wide receiver making that second cut. So there is some work to do there. But he's been a major asset for Texas A&M. Will the NFL have that slot corner safety role for him? I feel like they will, because it seems like that's the way that the NFL is rolling. Slot corners are getting a lot more play in Dynasty, where you're able to use them on a week-to-week basis and feel good about the point opportunities that you have. He doesn't necessarily have a true position. There is positives and negatives with that, because will he be on the field enough, or is he just going to be kind of situational his rookie year? The fact of the matter is that his ability to cover, tackle, play the run from a bunch of different alignments gives him the opportunity to be very interesting when it comes to being drafted and playing at the next level. Once again, it's going to be interesting to see how these guys perform at the Combine. It's going to be interesting to see where these guys get drafted at, to understand what their defensive head coaches or defensive coordinators feel about specific rules for these guys. So there will be more to come on that. But personally, I like the tenacity that Antonio Johnson has, and I'm really curious to see where he lands. Next up, we're going to talk about Jartavius Quan Martin out of Illinois. He's a defensive back. Once again, could be cornerback, could be safety, could be nickel, linebacker, hybrid kind of guy. It's one of those tough ones to see. Goes by Quan, and he has great size. He's physical. He's got the tackling skills that makes him very beneficial in that hybrid nickel linebacker kind of role. Great for sub packages in the NFL because of all that. And his tackling skills give him a boost as a defender, so they feel better about having him on the field against the run. But the things that I get a little bit nervous about is, as much of a likable skill set that he has as a project player to the NFL, he needs to get a little bit better at having high hips, be able to flip the hips and carry. I'm worried about how well he's going to do against some of these really fast, speedy athletes at the next level. If he's going to be pressing up on the smaller receivers, he better be right in their face, right in the line of scrimmage, because I just think that if they get past him, they're going to burn him down. Long speed should be consistent enough for the NFL, but I think it's going to be the quick twitch movement, and if they put him more in that nickel slot, that's where I'm going to be a little bit more concerned with some of that. Like I said, don't get me wrong, he has the coverage abilities to match up in the slot. He's physical enough to reroute wide receivers, disrupt the timing, and has the hands to be able to carry across the middle of the field and maintain the contact through the catch point with these guys. But if we're talking about some of these, really, really fast twitch guys across the middle, if he's not getting hands on them and pressing them and messing up the timing, he's going to struggle. And so there's going to be some concern based upon how they use him. And the expectations for Martin might be different depending on which team he goes to. If they want the best out of him, it's still going to be in that nickel spot. Maybe You actually put him at that nickel linebacker. That's what I feel like. So he's more lined up, and you have him specifically lined up on tight ends rather than the fast, small slot receivers. That would be my recommendation for him. But we'll have to see how it plays out, where he goes to see. And these are the types of things is like, okay, so now he goes to a division that has really good tight ends in it. I feel better about him as a player that I would grab because 6 games out of the year, there's an opportunity against a pretty formidable tight end kind of thing where he'll be able to get some points off of that. But we're talking about fantasy, and maybe that's not what you want to see him as. If you want to get fantasy points out of a guy like this, you want him to be close to the guy that's going to catch the ball, but also you want that guy to catch the ball so that Quan Martin can make the tackle. So, if I'm a coach in the NFL, I'd want him to probably be lined up against tight ends to line up and match up a little bit better. If I'm a fantasy owner of him in the NFL, I probably want him actually lining up against some of those fast little swap wide receivers. More tackles equal more points. So it's definitely one to watch. I don't think he's going to be a guy as a rookie that you're going to feel good about starting. I doubt that he's a guy that I would even probably draft before the 5th round of a dynasty league because we really just don't know what we're going to see out of him. If you got a taxi squad, there's opportunity there, but I don't see it as a year one kind of player that's going to make a significant impact. Next safety we're going to talk about is Cameron Mitchell out of Northwestern. Now, he had pretty solid junior and senior years. 46 tackles as a junior, 48 as a senior. Pretty standard there. He had 3 breakups as a junior, 7 as a senior, only 1 interception as a senior. And, I mean, he's not been the big play guy. Solid amount of tackles for college. I mean, he tracks the ball well. He's got good ball skills. He can get up on the line of scrimmage, have nice press coverage punch, hit him early in the routes, use the quickness to shadow. He's got a little bit better quickness than I would put at Quan Martin. Or he can, back off and close quickly when the ball comes out, kind of in those zone setups. He's got fluid movement. He's got, as I said, solid speed, solid quickness. He's got good length. And so that he can really cover downfield going deep. Probably one of the guys that's more quick than fast. And he's got solid length and leaping ability to make the plays. He has the athletic profile to be making plays, but he's not making the plays. But that's also part of why people weren't throwing it to him. Quarterbacks really went out of their way to not throw it to Mitchell while he was in college. He's instinctive. He's adept to reading routes and anticipating throws and strong in zone coverage. Kind of got that Sauce Gardner. In college, they're not throwing to him. I'm not saying he's Sauce Gardner, so don't hear what I'm not saying. He gets beat over the top too often and tends to get too handsy when running downfield if he is getting beat. Not my cup of tea when it comes to route recognition. He's hesitant at times and extremely susceptible to double moves. And as we said, then when he gets that double move on him, then he gets handsy and gets a penalty when he knows he's beat. Is that the right thing to do? Yeah, sometimes in college a little bit better than the NFL because you get the ball at the spot of the foul in the NFL. It's going to be a lot bigger issue. And in the NFL, you can't grab him even anywhere near what you can in college. So he's going to end up with a lot of flags early on. That being said, it's a guy to keep an eye on. This is the kind of guy as if he ends up being taken early or playing the safety role, I feel a little bit better about him. Again, the game has changed so much that guys come in with just D-back as their position. So how we see these guys, we're talking about safeties right now, but I've talked about 3 of these guys playing nickel corners and slot corners, and outside corners could be a possibility as well. It's hard to tell until you see what scheme they're going to go in and what position that team thinks of them as. But it's worth understanding where their strengths and weaknesses lie so that you can really understand if they're going to be a fantasy asset early on or not. Next player we're going to talk about is Brandon Joseph out of Notre Dame. He is a transfer from Northwestern. And he has played the traditional safety role. He's got phenomenal zone coverage in the deep portions of the field. When he was at Northwestern, they did a lot of middle field open coverage and showed a lot of quarters that had Brandon Joseph manning the deep middle of the fields. He played a ton of different coverages in Notre Dame and kind of played what Kyle Hamilton did, moved around a lot from high safety to the robber to the shallow zone defender. He's long, he's fluid, he's got good transition. And when he's given assignments in the red zone, he'll work in the slot to make sure to keep them off their timing. I wouldn't say that man coverage is one of his strengths per se. His zone coverage is definitely far better than his man-to-man coverage. But he's got the ability and versatility to run man when need to be. Now, he's got a great high IQ, and he diagnoses route combinations well. He's got solid hustle, and he's got good timing on triggering collisions at the ball with the catch point. You see some solid striking as a tackler. It's not his best aspect of his game, but he is capable of big hits, and pursuit is, nice from the deep range. There's really not a lot that you should feel nervous about with him as far as the pass game goes. But he's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all player. He's going to be very scheme-specific. He's going to really, really be good in a defense that plays a lot more zone coverage than man-to-man. But he's also done a lot in his career, so he's willing to learn. He's willing to be taught and do what's asked of him. He's not really been an in-the-box safety. He normally gives up too much space for ball carriers when you basically give them room to make the cuts, and that's something you got to just go downhill and make sure that you're breaking down at the right time. But he's giving them way too much space. And he's not what I would call a enthusiastic, hard-hitting tackler, as we've talked about some of the others. As I said, he'll get in there and he'll hit pretty good. But when you get him inside inside the tackles or in a little bit of traffic, or if a guy like Derrick Henry's coming towards him, he's probably gonna make an executive decision more so than get his nose in there. Big things is that he's got to continue to refine the angles on catching up to people on the run game to ensure that he's able to make those tackles. This is a kind of guy that in a Vic Fangio type defense, which I know Vic Fangio just got hired as a D coordinator, so if he ends up with the Miami Dolphins, then fantastic. But there's a decent amount of talent there in the safety room. But there's a lot of other coaches that are off his tree. That zone kind of ability is where he kind of checks the box. Again, more of a natural safety, more of a deep zone safety, not always necessarily fantasy relevant with the deep safeties if you're not making the big plays. But there's the opportunities to get the guys across the middle, to get the tackles. We're talking about safety, so they don't need to get the 10, 12 tackles a game. You'd love for them to. But if they get a couple pass offenses, maybe 5, 6 tackles, you're going to be all right. Now, I know we already talked about one Alabama safety, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about DeMarco Hellams. And honestly, I was watching Brian Branch's film and was like, who is this dude? So I went back and started looking at him. He's a versatile safety prospect, as I've said about 10 times tonight already. He honestly plays better when he's about 5 to 10 yards off the line of scrimmage in a true strong safety kind of role. When he has played strong safety, he's played well against the run and pass. Rolling from a too high look to being the strong safety on plays, he's shown the ability to run in the alleys, close in on ball carriers, be an effective tackler. He has the ability to make the proper plays, making the proper angles on ball carriers, and he delivers a heck of a hit. He's got solid range. He can be counted on as a solid defender in the run, as I said. In his pass coveraging, he's really good when it comes to hook curl kind of routes. And I love watching this guy go across the deep slant, across the middle, or a post route for these guys across the middle because he lights them up. You can tell that out of that zone, he's just ready to just come from a flat-footed stance and show a trigger delay to make sure that he's not getting that penalty and just laying the wood. I personally think he'd rather make the hit than make the interception a lot of times when you're watching him play. He's also probably not the fastest when it comes to overall natural foot speed and taking the receivers up the field. He seems to be a little bit of a step slow, but he does have some solid athletic ability to leap while running and to knock some of these balls away or at least help with the defense of the wide receiver at that aspect when he's a little bit beat. But he's once again a guy that's played in a bunch of different alignments. Personally think that he's going to be best in a strong safety role that has a zone defense type of player. Concerns that I have is some of his measurables, specifically on his 40 time. I want to see what that speed looks like. But overall, as I said, downhill safety, strong tackler. He's very instinctive. He comes off the corner strong when he's coming in for a blitz. He's played in the box a lot. Jumps routes very strongly. Could be some concerns with double moves because he seems like he's very predictive. It's hard to know how well he knows the defense's playbook versus if he's guessing on these slant routes or post routes and really breaking them off hard. Because when he does, it is just a car crash. It's really impressive. So he might not be a guy that goes a lot higher as some of these guys I've talked about, the Brandon Josephs, the Quan Martins, Antonio Johnsons, or Brian Branches. But DeMarco Hellams is a person that I'm very interested to see how he performs at the combine, but more so what kind of scheme he gets placed into and what the depth chart to leading up to getting into the role of a starter will look like. Maybe he won't be a guy valuable rookie year. Maybe we'll take that 1 to 3 year plan to get into a starting role in the NFL. So now we're going to get into cornerbacks, but I'm not sure if it really even matters what we're calling them anymore, as I said. Those are the guys that I feel like will play safety in the NFL, and then these are the guys that I feel like are going to play cornerback in the NFL. First one is Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. He's long, he's lean, he's got great athleticism, great size, height, and length to match up against the big number ones on teams on the boundaries. He's a great cover corner. He can lock down his side of the field as far as he has in college. Fantastic at man-to-man defense. Very quick with his feet. Got great change of direction. He's very flexible on when it comes to route combinations and making sure that he's staying on task with his wide receiver. He's got great long speed. I mean, He's really good. He's really good. The things about him, and we'll go over more of, the metrics and whatever, the scouting report per se. But he's going to be another guy where, as a rookie, he's going to be valuable. As a second year, he might be valuable. As a third year, you don't want him on your dynasty team. He's too good at man-to-man. He's solid press zone. He understands route concepts very well. They're going to stop throwing his way if he is, in fact, as good as he's been advertised as out of Oregon. He's got great instincts. He's got great awareness. He reads quarterbacks' eyes while keeping moving with his targets. His peripheral vision looks like it's phenomenal. And he's able to win a lot of the 50-50 situations and knock the ball down at the catch point. The one thing that he had as a weakness was his ball skills. And then he came out and had 4 interceptions this year. Also not afraid to tackle. Not afraid of physicality. He's a little lean. That's an NFL thing. They'll figure that out. But yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that as a rookie will be like Sauce Gardner, get a lot of balls his way, get the opportunity to make some ball skill interception plays, and then it's going to turn into, we don't want to throw to him anymore. All depends on scheme, looks at who's across from him, but this guy is a guy that I think is going to be really good in the NFL. As an NFL player, fantasy-wise, he's going to run out of time of being relevant. Next on the list is probably what I would consider the best nickel corner prospect in this year's draft, and that's Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. He's got just a great nose for the football. He does well to find it in man coverage and play the hands of the receivers. He's excellent rally skills from depth to set up and find the football and run support. He's got a reputation as being a big hitter, thanks to just some really well-timed instinctive plays. Really being able to read and react to quick hitting plays on the outside. He brings great confidence in his tackling through contact and generates big hits and collisions with ball carrier after not being a very big guy. As I said, his timing is very impressive. The ability for him to sync his hits with the timing of the football in the air seems very natural and just flows. He's great at knocking the ball out of the wide receiver's hands. They just seem instinctive. It's just natural ability for him to hit, wrap, try to knock everything out. He is better man than zone. When he's playing zone, he does have his eyes in the backfield probably a little bit too much, which causes some issues because smart, professional, seasoned veteran quarterbacks are going to be able to move him with their eyes and get him out of position, and that's going to cause some issues with him trying to stay on the field. Once again, big hitter, even though he's not a big dude. Nickel defense is my personal favorite for him. He's not afraid of coming up on the run. He's going to wrap up, make good tackles. Typically, you're going to be playing probably a little bit more man-to-man coverage coming out of the slot, coming across the middle. You're going to have that ability to do what you do best out of the nickel spot. Nickel corner is also like, you're the third best on the team, whatever. That nickel corner is like the slot wide receiver now. It's a completely different position than the other corners. You have to have the assets to be beneficial there. And they should have very little issue, the NFL that is, looking at this guy and not seeing his play style, his physical ability, his versatility, and say, yeah, this is a guy that we want on our team. Long term could be a guy that ends up on the outside. But at this point in time, impact starters need to be at the nickel position. And I think that's what Devin Witherspoon will end up being for whatever team drafts him. Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. Yes, Joey Porter senior's son. He's got great reach, can influence inside the contact window and at the line of scrimmage. He's looked a lot better in 2022 than he did in 2021. He seems more confident in his footwork. He's more, just feels like he's not thinking as much about his play. He's able to get his hands up and press coverage faster. And he's just so big. His tackle radius and catch points are massive. He's not afraid to hit in the run support. Probably gets that from his dad. And he's one of the most impressive guys when it comes to getting off blocks as far as the cornerback classes. There's been time, and the toughest thing about really looking at him in his 2022 season is he was so dominant for such a long period of time. He rarely even got tested. He got tested decently against Purdue the first game of the season where he broke up 6 passes and nearly had a pick 6. But he's so long, he's so versatile, and he's really an outside corner that's going to be the kind of guy that matches up with your ones, that is able to press coverage some of these bigger dudes on the outside. Could be a kind of lockdown guy. I don't know if he'll necessarily get to that level, but he's got really good football intelligence, and that's going to give him a lot of opportunities in a lot of different systems when it gets to the NFL. But again, because he's kind of longer, if you take him out of that press, kind of traditional press and run or kind of trailing philosophy, you're gonna get him beat a little bit. Off man isn't where Porter is gonna win. So if you're looking to play in cover 3, asking him to do kind of half turn play, cloud, cornerbacks, you're not gonna get the deep third kind of ability here. He's very solid in man-to-man coverage, trying to shut down a guy. Shorter, shallow zones is where I would also feel comfortable with him. But if you're going to start having him kind of drop and then try to break down and come back up on the ball, I think we're going to struggle to see him there. System that he falls in is where he's going to be interesting. But once again, if we're talking about fantasy football, he has the opportunity, because of how long and lanky he is, to allow receptions, to get him tackles, and knock down a lot of passes, with the opportunities of getting some interceptions. Now, he only had one as a senior, one interception that is, so it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of does. But if he goes to a team that plays a lot of press man, they'll get the most value out of him, and that's where I think that he'll be really, really beneficial. Either way, he'll be a day one kind of starter out of the NFL. And day one starters at the quarterback position will be fantasy relevant in their rookie years. This guy, I feel like he probably has 3 years, depending on how quickly he picks up the game. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. Next guy on the list is Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami. This is just athlete, height, weight, speed dude. He's big, physical. Once again, when you're big and physical, but what are you good at? Press coverage opportunities. He's got a lot of length. He's got a large area of influence, and he's able to reroute the wide receivers early on in their routes. Got a lot better with his instincts this year. Made a solid leap because he seems like he's playing a lot more confident rather than 2021. And that's when he was playing for the Bulldogs. He was a transfer from the Georgia Bulldogs. The nice thing about him is that you might have the opportunity with some special teams aspects. He's very versatile. He's comfortable bodying wide receivers at catch points. He does a lot to contest their hands, to try to get past defenses. He's really strong in press man coverage, but as a bigger cornerback, you have the kind of need to be quick and fluid in your transitions on these short in and out routes, slant routes, kind of double move routes, and that's where he's a little bit tight, a little bit high. He has solid speed and acceleration, so he can try to catch up, and he's done a lot of that to kind of hide some of it, but he also needs to get a little bit better on his open field tackling. I hate guys that are going to be out on an island and are not strong at open field tackling, because that means I might not get any fantasy points out of him, and that is a concern. But he's very good at knocking the ball down. He's big enough to coat the guys so they catch it and fall and gets the tackles. But again, they're very scheme dependent. If he's in Joey Porter, if he's in a press man heavy system, then that's going to be a way for success. But if he's a little bit more, he could end up looking at a guy that goes to a safety position. Time will tell. A little bit more developmental, maybe not necessarily a day one starter as a Joey Porter Jr., but kind of has the same ceiling opportunities as he does. The final player we're going to talk about tonight is Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. Extremely competitive cornerback. Really fights the catch point with forcing breakups, going through the player to try to make the play. He's best when he can disrupt the timing of the wide receiver and the quarterback. He does have better scheme and coverage versatility than a guy like Tyreek Stevenson. He's experienced in man and zone coverage. He plays with good instincts. He does a good job working against rub routes, which is something that you don't really see coming out of college that much. A lot of people still struggle with that in the NFL. And his ball skills are really good. He makes plays on the football at a consistent and high rate. He's probably one of the better ball skills corners that we have coming out this year. He plays more physical than his body size, which is something I always like. But he is slim, and he is thin. He's just a thin dude, and that could cause some issues when he's going up against a guy like A.J. Brown or a Drake London type size wide receivers. But he's not afraid to fight for it. He is a bit of a freelancer when it comes to coverage. It's not the best thing you want to do. He does get a little bit too aggressive, and that could, once again, as I've said, some of the other guys, open him up to some of these double moves. He's even been too aggressive in press coverage where he's actually, missing punches or losing it right at the line of scrimmage, and then he's immediately in the trail position. He had 6 penalties last year for pass interference, so he is a little bit grabby. And honestly, you could be a little bit concerned about his deep speed, but I think he's solid. I mean, if you're going to talk about guys that aren't going to be able to keep up with Tyreek Hill, nobody can keep up with guys like Tyreek Hill. So as long as you put him in a sound situation where he has some over-the-top coverage, safety help over those vertical routes, I think that Forbes has a solid opportunity to be very, very fantasy relevant. If he gets drafted high enough, if he goes to the right team where he's going to be starting early his rookie year, I feel really good about him being on the field. Now, I don't feel like he's going to be a slot corner. I think that he's much better at, running the outside kind of guy, but he's also got good kick return ability. And by the way, he has the most pick sixes in FBS and SEC history. But part of that is the aggressiveness. But Trevin Diggs had massive aggressiveness and it got him, one of the best cornerbacks of the league in 2021. So there is a place for his play style in the NFL. In fantasy, sometimes it's even better because if he is too aggressive, they go by, they tackle. But the problem is that if he's too aggressive, somebody else is making the tackle and it's not him because he's on the ground wondering why they didn't throw it on the double move route. But he definitely could be a cornerback 2 in the league. So once again, it's going to be kind of one of those, where does he end up? What does that mean for everything? But Emmanuel Forbes is one of the guys I'm the most interested in as far as IDP, where he lands at, and what he's going to be doing for that team. Because that aggressiveness and that big playability is hard to find. So again, most pick sixes in FBS and SEC history. That's exciting. So that's where we're at. Cornerbacks and safeties done. As I said, next week we're going to be talking about defensive line and linebackers after I get back from the NFL Combine. So excited to see that. Excited to see what we got going on for this year's draft coming up. And as always, remember that defense wins fantasy. We will see you guys next week.